I think it's fair to say, and I think that everyone on the panel would agree, that the instances in which we haven't figured out how to go ahead have been very, very few, have been small in nature and small in numbers. So I'm very, very grateful for, let me put it this way, the presence of the mayors in Aloha here today for the signing of this agreement speaks volumes. It speaks volumes about where we're going and the confidence that we can have. We are, in fact, setting examples. We are, in fact, setting the trend. We are, in fact, the anchor of the Asia-Pacific region. I think that the kind of goal we set to ourselves way back when APEC came, when the nations of the entire Asia-Pacific region came here to Hawaii, and what we realized, we are, we're not a bridge we're not between East and West. We're not a resting point, and everybody goes on to something else. In the 21st century, Hawaii is the anchor of the Asia-Pacific region, and we are stepping up in order to address the issues that we need to address. I want to thank the legislature for the Joint Resolution 69. And I urge those of you who may not seen a copy of it, again, it's easy to dismiss it. It's words on paper, but this resolution is very, very carefully put together and is exactly reflective of what's going to be signed today. I want to make it absolutely clear that a commitment is being made today. A joint commitment on behalf of the people of Hawaii is being made today in a very, very formal way. We're dealing with adaptation plans, our navigating change plan. The legislature has led the way in our invasive species council in terms of funding and dealing with it. Our Hawaii Clean Energy Initiative, the Hawaii Growth Initiative to promote green jobs. The rain follows the forest. The child of DLNR and Williams' commitment and the entire commitment of the Department of Land and Natural Resources, where we are directly addressing the question of water and sustainability. What used to be called carrying capacity has now become sustainability, the culture of sustainability. Carrying capacity is something we wanted to achieve. Since that time, in the 1970s, when carrying capacity was the motivating phrase or word for us, we've now moved that into subsuming it into the very culture of our existence right now. It's bringing all together, all the jurisdictions together, agencies, sectors, communities, to build a sustainable Hawaii for our current and our future generations. Let me conclude just by saying that it's just a little less than a year when I had the opportunity to meet with the Honorable Ronald Jamal. Many of you know him as, on one instance, his official title as the Seychelles ambassador on climate change and small state dependencies. There are island states, of course, all around the world, and he was associated with the Global Change Partnership and is the chairman of it. And the state of Hawaii was the very first entity, official entity, governmental entity, to sign on to the partnership. So this is not just rhetorical observations taking place. These are real commitments by these very able leaders on behalf of their communities to say that we intend to succeed with this. And we want to share our successes. I think it was one of the principal reasons that Hawaii, as a state, was able to compete with nations around the world in order to be chosen for 2016 for the International World Conservation Congress of the International Union for the Conservation of Nature. 160 nations are going to be represented here at the Olympics of conservation efforts throughout the world in 2016. When we started out to say that we would like that Congress to come to Hawaii, the United States, the Department of State itself was skeptical and didn't want to put the entry forward. We ended up competing against all these other countries. In the end, we competed against Turkey, right? And our position was very simple. When I say ours, the decision team came to every single county, Just didn't land here, right, Kirk? Just didn't land on Oahu, go down to the convention center, check it out, go see the tourism folks and all that. No. They experienced Hawaii. We said, we're not competing with anybody else in the rest of the world. We stand for Hawaii and Hawaii's values. We're going to present Hawaii, its people, its values, what it represents, its hopes, its vision, its dreams for you. And you decide whether this resonates for the other 160 nations who want to conserve this planet. And we were chosen. I get chicken skin speaking about it right now because everybody in this state contributed to establishing an atmosphere that had those folks choose Hawaii. We're off to a great start. This signing today is a pleasure and a privilege, and I am absolutely delighted to be in the company of these very fine people who have committed not just themselves, not just their administrations, not just their legislatures and council, but committed themselves to what Hawaii is all about. Our diversity truly does define us and not divide us. Thank you very much. In some respects, we didn't choose at all. We're responding to the realities of our time. And with regard to climate change and global warming, the absence of action on our part would mean we were running away from our kuleana, from our responsibility. So the choice was, in effect, do we want to try to take charge of events and try to shape our own destiny to the degree we can? Or do we let events get in the saddle and ride us and merely be observers of a fate that's being dictated essentially by others and outside events, where we end up then being passive recipients rather than active participants. So the Aloha Plus Challenge is a response to our responsibilities. Well, we see them in an integrated way. Here we've been speaking of and mentioning the Aloha Challenge. I just thought I'd hold that up for a second to show you that this isn't some multi-page document. It's not something that has to be heavily footnoted. Of course, we have the studies and the analyses to go with this, but this says the Aloha Plus Challenge, a culture of sustainability. How do we sustain it, and how do we declare our commitment and sustain our capacity to respond? So there's six items here, and they're all interrelated. It's not necessarily one's a priority over the other. Quite the opposite, as a matter of fact. Absent to deal with any one of them affects all the others, and they're very, very direct. 6 targets: clean energy, local food, natural resource management, waste reduction, smart sustainable communities, and green workforce and education. You can see, I think, from that general outline that everything is integrated, and that a failure to address any one of those means that the others would be adversely affected as well. It's the kind of thing, I'll show you another form. We have what we call our resiliency forums right here. This is where we do surveys. This is where we meet with the communities. This is where we ask experts to come. Here's where people can make inquiries. And then we try to come up with what kind of practical everyday solutions can we come up with in terms of the general responsibilities that we've outlined in the challenge itself. So a culture of sustainability means that we respond in a organized and systematic way to what are otherwise seen as very formidable challenges on a very large scale. It's interesting conceptually when the issue of the International Union for the Conservation of Nature comes up. That's kind of the World Cup. We just finished the World Cup, you know, in soccer. The World Cup of Conservation Organization meetings is the Congress that's held every 4 years, just like the Olympics and the World Cup. 160 plus nations around the world gather to share information, to share perspectives, to inform and inspire one another, to make sure that when the issue of conservation of the planet comes up, that it is that it is understood and acted upon in terms of the necessity of all working together. No one nation or group of nations alone can accomplish this. It has to be an integrative, planet-wide effort. And that's what the Congress means. Now, why would it come to Hawaii? I've already mentioned that the Congress of conservation organizations involves 160 plus nations. So how could Hawaii qualify? What we understood was that Hawaii has a unique opportunity to present itself in terms of conservation, not just for us, but as an example to the world. We're 2,500 miles away from any other large landmass. So that means we're a closed universe in some respects. So we're a battleground and a testing ground for the idea of conservation and the possibilities of exhibiting an organized effort to accomplish the task of conservation. So that's how we presented it. We didn't compete with other nations as such. We had to actually get our own State Department to recognize that this could come to the United States, and more particularly to Hawaii, and that it was appropriate. And it was appropriate because of the approach that we took. We didn't try to establish any demerits or diminish in any way any other possible venue for the Congress. On the contrary, what we said was, no, Hawaii is a unique element in and of itself, whether it's in terms of endangered species, whether it's in terms of trying to meet the necessity of growing local food, our energy crisis in terms of having to import oil and so on. We face real, genuine problems that everybody else has to come to grips with, except maybe more so in many instances. So we are an ideal laboratory, if you will, for people to understand not only the necessity of sustainability and conservation, but to have a philosophy as expressed in the Aloha spirit, where our diversity defines us and does not divide us, where we're able to concentrate whatever talents and energies we have, whatever experience and understanding we have of the world around us in a way that allows the diverse elements in Hawaii to come together towards that common purpose. And that succeeded. In the end, the two contestants, if you will, were Turkey and Hawaii, a whole nation, right? And the state of Hawaii. And Hawaii was selected in no small measure because the President of the United States actually wrote a personal letter to the Site Selection Committee saying the United States was prepared to support this effort, and more particularly that Hawaii offered a unique opportunity for us to explore all the questions of sustainability in today's world of climate change and global warming. Well, we have a practical demonstration of it. Last year, we signed on, that is to say, the state of Hawaii actually signed on to the Global Island Partnership. This particular record that I have here is a picture of myself and Ambassador Rani Jameau, who literally comes as an ambassador from the Seychelles Islands in the Indian Ocean, and is also associated then with the Small Island Developing State ambassadorship. Small islands, particularly in the Pacific area, are dealing right now with the questions of global warming and climate change because they're affected with the rise of the oceans. Some literally of the small states not only are economically challenged, but they're actually geographically and climatologically challenged with the idea that they may in fact disappear, or that the oceans will rise high enough and fast enough that it affects their social and economic and physical existence. So we signed on to that because it's not an abstraction at this stage. It's not an academic issue to be taken up in even the near distant future. It's here right now. So we believe that the activities that we're engaged in right now with regard to resiliency and preparedness affect real people in real situations today. That's part of the reason why the President established a task force on climate preparedness and resiliency. And I'm very pleased to say that I was named to that, in part because the state of Hawaii is preparing itself right now for what needs to be done with what used to be called carrying capacity, by the way. When I first ran for office, I was concerned with these issues, and the operative phrase in those days, some 3 decades ago, was carrying capacity. What was the capacity for us to be able to sustain our capacity, carrying capacity, say for water, not just its preservation, but its utilization in a practical, everyday sense, land control measures, etc. Now that has come to be sustainability. Before we were thinking, well, how do we keep going? Now we're thinking about, can we keep going? That's in that sense, carrying capacity has become sustainability, because we're not sure anymore on a mass basis as to how prepared we're going to be and what we're going to have to do in order to deal with that, the questions that arise from that. That's why the President put together this task force. And in particular, what the contribution that Hawaii has to make is we've put together an initial game plan, if you will, or an approach called Navigating Change. And we call it our Navigating Change and Adaptability. That is how carrying capacity has been transposed into sustainability, which means adaptability. How do we adapt our situation, our present condition and circumstances in a way that will enable us to sustain ourselves and sustain our environment such that we will be able to, with some degree of confidence, be able to say that, that people in fact do have a future. So we can say, well, you've got here you are, international understanding and working together. Here you are with practical, everyday forums to try to come to grips with it, so that you can be optimistic. The fact that people are willing to meet means they have some degree of hope and some degree, not necessarily of certainty, but of commitment to try to achieve recognizable goals. And to be optimistic about the capacity to do that. But fundamentally, this is a commitment of necessity. In some respects, it's fair to say it really doesn't matter whether you're optimistic or not, unless you want to be a passive element that simply takes whatever comes. You have to assert yourself. I think what differentiates us as human beings from the other species on the earth is not only our capacity before, but apparently the requirement of Homo sapiens to make judgments on itself. We judge each other and we judge ourselves every day. And in this regard, where sustainability is concerned, we're making judgments. We're drawing conclusions about ourselves. And so I think the natural inclination of human beings is to try to address an issue, come to grips with it, meet whatever challenges are there, and have some degree of confidence that you're going to be able not just to address it, but to succeed where the challenge is the issue.